Alright guys, so as you know, this is the last season of The Office, and The Office premiered last Thursday, and this is what I think will happen in the last season of The Office, and how I feel about the last season of The Office. I'm gonna start off by saying that I'm kinda sad that The Office is gonna end this year. I think that if Steve Carell stayed on for season 8, and for this year as well, I think the show would have went on for maybe another 2 years. So, kinda sad that it is gonna leave, but in a way, I think it is proper to end it in the sort of sense that they're ending on a mid note, not on a low note. So this season is going to be full of surprises. And as I thought about that, I saw last week's premiere, and of course, we're in for a lot of surprises this season. Now, before the actual episode aired, I remember reading about stuff saying that this year is going to be focused a lot more on Jim and Pam, and also there's going to be a lot more focus on Dwight and his life, and how his life is going to change throughout the season. I think that to start off, the first episode of the season did a perfect job in recapping whatever we left off on from last season. I think the most sad part was finding out that the kid that Angela had was not actually Dwight's. So I kind of felt like that was a bit of a bummer, but other than that, I liked the Kevin crushing the turtle and how he tried to bring it back to life. I like the part where while the camera crew was interviewing Pam and Jim, where they take off their mics and Pam is like kind of saying that their life is kind of a little bit boring and stuff, and how Jim is kind of like questioning his whole time at Dunder Mifflin throughout the whole episode, and by the end of the episode, he calls his friend and he says he wants to be a partner. I think that was a really great part, and it's kind of gonna make the show more interesting for the last season, because I think right now they have done everything and probably anything possible in the office. They have done everything inside the office environment, and I think that this year should be more of, expanding to Scranton and showing what the characters are going through in their lives around the city. I think, Pam and Jim's story still has a lot to go to, because, they had the babies and they had, all the love tribulations that they had from back then. But now it's kind of like, what's their next step in life? How is Jim gonna, finally do something with his life that he'll be very happy with? And how is Pam gonna adjust to that as well? I think that the next few episodes are gonna be awesome, because supposedly the next episode is gonna feature Roy. And I really wanted Roy to be back, and he's back, so finally we get to see some closure on his story that was affected by Jim and Pam. And speaking of Dwight, Dwight had a great episode as well. Dwight found a kid that was pretty much called Dwight Jr. The two new co-workers at the office, they're kind of called Mini Jim and Mini Dwight. And I kind of felt like, I kind of know why people are calling, the Mini Dwight guy as the Oedipus to Dwight. It kind of feels like he's being competition to Dwight, but in a way, he's not really trying to compete for the job. And it's kind of giving us an interesting thing for Dwight to do. In the past few seasons, he's been a caricature of what he was in the beginning. And I think that now, stuff is starting to happen to him that we're kind of seeing a progress in his characterization. I think that, the baby that could have been his with Angela kind of gave us this kind of interesting thought that maybe Dwight wants to settle in with a family. Maybe he wants to, change up his life so that he can support a family. And I think that throughout the season, we're probably going to see, Dwight trying to see how it would be like if he had a family. I think when he sees the resemblance between him and the Dwight Jr. guy, I kind of felt like, he's trying to connect with someone that really might not connect with him, but he's trying to make a connection somewhere. And of course, Andy was awesome. I love Ed Helms' acting in The Office. He's always like this over the top, singing buffoon, but that's his character. And in this episode, he doesn't sing, but him and Nellie, those scenes were awesome because everybody hated Nellie. And to be honest, Nellie wasn't as annoying as people said on the internet, but when you compare her to other characters in the show and how the show is made up, her character felt a bit out of place, and her character felt like the writers were trying to make us like her, but at the same time, she was trying so hard not to be like the characters on the show, so it was really hard not to, try to like her. But on this episode, everyone's trying to get their revenge, and in the ending credits where they're throwing garbage at her. That was pretty classic, and I think this season is going to be an awesome season where we kind of see what happens between Nelly and Andy, and maybe by the end of the season, they kind of reconcile, and maybe by the end, who knows what's going to happen. Now, that was pretty much the season premiere. We're obviously going to see more of some of the characters. I read online that Mindy Kaling and BJ Novak are only going to be in some episodes this season. Mindy Kaling has said, I think, two episodes, and BJ Novak is only going to be like a recurring appearance. So I think right now, the way that it started, I hope it continues on. I think that bringing back the awkwardness that was from the earlier seasons with the emotional stories that were in the middle seasons, I think bringing that back will bring some nostalgia and bring some of the older fans back into the Office viewing party, and kind of just show that, the show could still go on, but in my opinion, ending it on this kind of note would be awesome. And I read a story online saying that what's her name? The girl that plays Angela and Dwight, they gave an interview, and sorry, I still have a bit of a cold. Sorry about that. But yeah, I heard that they were trying to get Michael Scott to come back, and they couldn't deny or confirm that Michael Scott will make a return. I think, in general, since Steve Carell is a nice guy, probably, and he probably just wants to distance himself from The Office. He doesn't want to be like this one type of acting kind of comedian. That's the problem with like actors like Will Ferrell and probably Sacha Baron Cohen right now. They don't want to be these one type of stereotypical comedians. Steve Carell is trying to branch out, and I think that, his past few theatrical releases, the Seeking a Friend at the End of the World and Hope Springs, they weren't huge hits, but he is trying to do something different, and I think that that should be commendable. He doesn't want to be the same kind of, the strict, very, he doesn't know what he's saying when he's saying this stuff to people kind of character with Michael Scott. And, I remember on Twitter he said that Michael Scott is dead, and Michael Scott is living in this other apartment in Seattle or something like that. He's kind of like trying to play around with the fans, but in the back of my mind, and probably in the back of his mind, he has to come back for at least one episode. I think that if this is going to be the last season, and if the last episode does not feature Michael Scott, I think that will be kind of nailed to the coffin for Office fans, because The Office was built off of a remake of a British series, and Michael Scott's character kind of helped the series go to the next level. Him, Dwight Schrute, and Jim's characters were all the characters that kind of made the show into what it is right now. They're all, characters that you see in real life, and when you see them on the show, it's kind of like, oh, yeah, I know this guy, I know that guy, he looks like someone else. Michael Scott is very integral to the story of The Office, Last season, it was kind of weird not hearing his name. Surprisingly, the only person that referred Michael was Daryl Philbin, and that wasn't even a deliberate, oh, this reminds me of Michael Scott. No, it was kind of like, if you didn't hear it properly, you wouldn't hear the actual reference, but they just said that, I think it was the episode where everyone's in the office warehouse, and they're all just talking, and Daryl Philbin was talking about how they used to call Michael Scott as Dennis the Menace. And it was kind of sad not hearing like any of the other characters talk about Michael Scott, because a lot of the characters have more, interaction with him and more like stories with him. I wonder what's happening with him and Erin, because Erin, remember, looks to Michael as a father figure, and Michael gives her the phone number. And I wish that, in some of the scenes, maybe she's talking to him over the phone, saying that she's trying to bring him to the office again, maybe to see them one last time. Or maybe, when in one of the deleted scenes, Pam finds out that Michael named one of his dogs after Pam. I wish that there was more connection in the episodes, but I think that this year we're gonna see Michael come back in some way, shape, or form in like the early episodes, and maybe come physically in one of the last 2 or maybe 3 episodes. I hope that either the last episode is an episode of him and Holly getting married, or if it's an episode where they're closing down Dunder Mifflin, and as everyone's like looking at the building, Michael Scott comes by and he's like, "Oh, you guys are still here," and then he just has a nice talk, and everyone just leaves in their cars, and the last shot of the last episode of the series would be, Dunder Mifflin, and then on the door maybe someone flips the sign saying it's closed forever. I think that will be a nice way to end the series, but I don't know if they already written the ending or they're still thinking about it, but I hope that Steve Carell accepts coming back. And the great news is a lot of the older characters are coming back to the show, along with Roy. I think that Karen Filippelli will be back. Rashida Jones is obviously working on Parks and Rec, so she most likely will be back for at least 1 or 2 episodes of this season. And some of the older characters, I think I read online that 15 of the past characters from the past seasons will be back. Hopefully, we get to see Jan. I want to see Jan. I hope that, in the last episode, everybody comes back and Jan sees Michael and Holly happy and she gets into this kind of fit. I hope that happens, but, that's my thoughts about this last season. I'm going to miss The Office. The Office is one of my favorite shows of all time. And it's such a unique show, I work at an office right now, and whenever I go in, I kind of feel like I wish I had a Michael Scott as a boss, or I wish I had these kinds of people around me. There are those kinds of people, but they're not as like interactive as in the show. But 9 great seasons. I think it's 9 great seasons. I hope I'm not wrong, but yeah. So 9 seasons, and we have to see until May to see what actually happens at the end. But I just hope that everybody will be back in the last episode. That's my only wish. I don't even care if Michael Scott comes in for 10 seconds in the last episode. I just wish that he comes and, he says something that can end off the show in a very good note. And a last thing to say is that I think that this year will be an awesome year for The Office. The episodes look funny, and a lot of the characters are starting to look like they will have some closure throughout the series, and that's it. I'll see you guys back in May about an Office episode, but until then, enjoy the last season. I know it's kind of sad, but for all of you Dunder Mifflin fans out there, we all know that this show is awesome. No one can take that away from us, so enjoy. And I'll be back with the 1001 lists after a couple of videos probably. So see you guys then. Take care, guys.